Do I need to hit go live or you?
Welcome back to This Week in Privacy, our weekly series where we discuss the latest updates with what we've been working on within the Privacy Guides community, and this week's top stories in the data privacy and cybersecurity space, including Discord's new age verification push. Both Google and Amazon doorbells are in the mainstream headlines, and a reminder about DHS social media surveillance. I'm Jordan, and this week I'm joined by Nate.
Hello.
Privacy Guides is a nonprofit which researches and shares privacy-related information and facilitates a community on our forum and matrix where people can ask questions and get advice about staying private online and preserving their digital rights. Now, let's get straight into the biggest news in privacy and security from the past week.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, Jordan. Our first story this week, we're going to talk about Discord's new age verification push. A lot of you guys may have already seen this. This has really been making waves online, or at least in a lot of the spaces I'm in, which includes Discord. So maybe this is a bit of a sampling bias, but this has definitely been in the headlines. So earlier this week, Discord announced, really that's it. They announced that moving forward, all accounts are by default going to be treated as teen accounts, which means that you will be severely limited in certain functionality. Excuse me. I have read so many articles this week. So let me try and see if I can see if this one mentions what the restrictions are on a teenage account. I mean, obviously there's things like if a server is marked as like 18 plus, which I don't know how obvious this is to some of you guys, but like I'm in like a true crime server, for example. So that would be 18 plus. So it's not just porn. It could be anything. And there's also like certain messages won't go through by default and they get filtered and stuff like that. I'm not seeing it here. But anyways, yeah, it basically just restricts your account by default. However, you can age verify. There's kind of a lot to this story and I'm having a hard time putting things in the proper order here, but it's let's just go ahead and say this. Some people have accused Discord of backpedaling because they started there was another article that came out about midweek where Discord basically emphasized that you don't necessarily have to submit ID because they're going to try and verify your age automatically. That was part of the initial announcement. So personally, I don't know if I would call that backpedaling, but I get where you're coming from, that like they definitely put more emphasis on that in the middle of the week when this got met with a lot of pushback. They were like, no, guys, relax. They said most people won't have to verify their IDs. So let me talk about that part real quick. By default, Discord is going to try to guess your age using account metadata. So that would be things like how long you've had the account, what sort of games you play, what time of day you're generally active and stuff like that. If they get it wrong is when you will have to verify ID, or if they can't determine your age. Or I guess more accurately, you won't have to, you'll just get reverted to a teen account. And if you're fine with that, then you're fine with that. But depending on what kind of servers you're in, again, that may get you booted. So this is where things start to get dicey, as you can imagine, because this article we've chosen here from Ars Technica, I chose this one specifically, not because of the headline, but because this one also has a really deep dive into Discord's verification system and how it's supposed to work. Apparently, there's two ways of doing it. One of them is a biometric scan, which they claim will be totally on device. It'll never leave your device. It's like a video selfie. And then if your phone determines that you are 18, it just sends a yes or no back to the server. And as you can imagine, this is going to affect younger users most and people who look young. Because I mean, I obviously look way above 18, but I feel like I've told this story somewhere before. When I was in college in my English class, I sat behind a girl that I swear to God, I thought she was like 20 and apparently she was 40. So some people just don't look their age. And especially when you get younger and it's like, okay, the line between 17 and 18 is literally a day. So how's Discord supposed to guess that accurately? I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. But anyways, so you can do the face scan, which if they are to be believed, stays on your device. It just sends a yes or no back to the server. If the face scan doesn't work, then you have to submit ID, which they say is deleted as soon as possible. But they don't really give guarantees on what that is. They just say, like, we promise we delete it as soon as we're done. That might be immediately. That might be a couple days. It's really hard to know. And for those of you who missed it, I just do really quick want to address the headline. For audio listeners, the headline of this article we chose is Discord faces backlash over age checks after data breach exposed 70,000 IDs. That happened last year. I want to say late last year, but it may have been early last year. No. In October, R's senior security editor, Dan Gooden, joined others, warning the best advice is to assume they have had their data stolen. So I think that was late last year. Anyways, I did a second look into that story in preparation for this one. And I think that was also the result of, what's the word I'm looking for? The UK's Online Safety Act. Discord already did this once over in the UK. Those 70,000 IDs were part of the appeals process. That's the word I'm looking for. That's where these came from, is people who were submitting appeals submitted their ID. And I'm assuming because they had so many IDs to go through and there was such a backlog, that required them to, they had a backlog of IDs, a stack of IDs. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. That was also with a different provider. I don't know that really matters. This whole breakdown here from Ars Technica is really interesting because it's almost like a Matryoshka doll of different companies. Like, they say that they're going through KID, but then KID passes it on to somebody else. Where did it go? Privately. KID does not receive personal data from Discord when performing age insurance. And then it was weird. It's like again, ours has this really good write-up here where, like, when you look at one company's privacy policy, they say that they work with this other company who works with another company. And I don't know, it's really weird. But eventually it does lead back to this company in the EU who says that they employed a double-blind implementation where basically they never know what your account is. They're just verifying your age. And there's something wrong with the CSS here that, like, some of this text is black on my screen for some reason, so it blends in with the black background. But yeah, it's a whole thing. I think that kind of sums up the facts of the story. This has faced immense backlash. I've already seen one script floating around that I don't know if it works or not, but it claims that it basically sends the yes check back to KID and verifies you now. We don't know if Discord's going to, like, invalidate that by the time March rolls around, because I think this is supposed to take place in March. Some of the servers I'm in, we've definitely been having discussions about other platforms. And, oh, man. I think, unfortunately, the best platform, and I'll say why I say unfortunately in a second. I think, unfortunately, the best platform we have right now is Matrix. And I mean, nothing against the Matrix people, but and they even admit it. They have their own blog post. I'll see if I can pull it up while I'm talking here, but they have their own blog post where they're kind of welcoming people who are joining Matrix and Element for the first time. And they admit that they're like, we're not really a drop-in replacement right now because they've been so busy prioritizing. They have a lot of public service contracts in Europe, and that's what's been paying the bills to hire more developers, which I totally get. But that also means that they haven't really had the time to dedicate towards, man, I'm really not finding this blog right now. I tried Element and Matrix. I'll find it later. But they haven't had the time to really prioritize some of the things that you would expect if you're coming from Discord for the first time. Things like custom emojis, things like streaming games, voice chat. I think some servers support voice chat, but not all of them. So, and they also admit in their blog post that they are also, as a UK entity, trying to figure out the best way to implement age verification to comply with UK law. They do mention that in their blog post, that some servers may still have to do that depending on where they're located. But yeah, I think that's kind of all I've got at the moment regarding this. Matrix is not perfect, but the thing it has going for it, I guess, just to kind of finish that thought, is it is fully open source. There is end-to-end encryption available, especially in DMs. They're one-on-one are default. They can be turned on in rooms if you feel you need that for some reason. It can be decentralized. You can host your own server. So, I mean, it's definitely a step up from a privacy perspective. It's just, I think it would be a tough sell to get a lot of longtime Discord users onto Matrix because of the feature set that it's missing. But I've again, I'm in some servers where we've been looking into some other stuff, and like all of the other things that I see or I have seen personally that are like that look really good, that look like they might actually be a good replacement from an end user perspective. It's just repeating the cycle. You know, they're all like, they just raised $9 million in VC funding, or they're, you know, closed source, they're this, they're that. And it's like, cool. So in 5 years, we're going to be right back here where we started. I think that's kind of all I've got for now. Jordan, did you have any thoughts on this story?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I want to talk about here is, I guess, the privacy concerns with this, because I've seen some people saying that, you know, they're not requiring ID from everybody, so that's okay, right? But I think one issue with that idea, right, is the way these like age, basically they use some sort of age estimation technology, which is like based on, you know, a data set of what people look like at a certain age, right? And it's kind of been like a long studied thing where we've been able to find out that these age estimation tools are not very good at estimating different types of people. Like, for example, it's, you know, people of color who are women. Like, there's been like studies that have been done on that, and it doesn't estimate age correctly for those people. And you know, the more of a minority you are, the less chance it is to be correct, right? So it's kind of problematic in that way. And also these platforms have to basically, you know, you have to show your face and submit a biometric scan, which these platforms say that that scan is not like saved or used to you know, improve their services. But I think at a certain point, we're seeing, you know, all these people like, I remember last year when people were facing the Discord age estimation technology, a lot of people were using Death Stranding like photo mode to bypass it. But I think that when they have a lot of these, you know, people using video games and stuff like that, we're going to find that a lot of these companies are going to have to start, you know, actually saving some of that, because there'll be people bypassing it with that technology. So they need to be able to control that, right? So I think the problem is still there, even if you say, you know, not everyone will have to. I think it's also important to mention that this was only to access like not safe for work channels and servers. So I don't think your access to the entirety of Discord would be restricted. You just wouldn't be able to access not safe for work channels, which I think that's another debate, like what exactly is classified as not safe for work, because, you know, I think that could be deemed different for a lot of people. And, you know, Discord could decide to set a server to not safe for work, which could kind of force people to verify their ID. So Discord is in sort of like a very centralized position, right? Where, you know, like Nate talked about, Matrix is a decentralized alternative where if the default matrix.org home server decided to implement age verification, then you would actually have the choice to switch to a different home server which wasn't applying the same restrictions, right? So I think Matrix is definitely a step in the right direction, but I think it's very much missing a lot of the key features that Discord has. And, you know, a lot of people who use Discord rely on all the time. Like, you know, people do, like they watch movies together on Discord, or they, you know, want to screen share to their friends or be in a massive group call. And as far as I know, a lot of those features in Matrix are not as mature or very patchy, or not really applied in the same way that, Discord does it. So I think a lot of people are going to be kind of unhappy with Matrix as a replacement to Discord, which I think is just highlighting another issue where I think we need more diversity between platforms. Like, I think it would be better if we had, more alternatives to Discord that actually took privacy concerns seriously, because Discord is like always not really been a platform that has cared about data privacy. And we can kind of tell now that that's never really been a priority, because they're fine with pushing forward with all these age checks, right? So I don't know, it's kind of an unfortunate situation to be in for a lot of people, because, some people rely on these channels and servers, and it's going to basically mean either give up your ID or miss out on that entire community, which for some people is just not possible. So I do think this is sort of very coercive. It's sort of forcing people into giving up biometric scans of their faces. And even then, your biometric scan of your face may not actually approve you. So you might actually have to upload ID as well. Overall, I think this is a very bad move from a lot of companies that are trying to push this now. It's only going to be a matter of time. Like last year, we saw the breach with 70,000 IDs from Discord, and I think it's only a matter of time before these, KID companies get compromised in some way. It's a treasure trove of data for hackers to go after, because they are dealing with such sensitive information. So I think I don't know. I'm really annoyed by this. I think more people should be talking about it. I did put together some posts on social media, kind of pushing people towards alternatives for their communities. So I don't know if anyone saw that, but I think it's also a problem with a lot of these, community setups where you need to basically advocate for these platforms in the entirety of the community, because if not everyone moves, then you basically you're not going to be able to use the platform. So it's kind of a frustrating space to be in right now. But yeah, what do you think, Nate?
Yeah, for sure. In regards to your post, actually, that was included in the newsletter this week. So if y'all are subscribed to the newsletter, you definitely got a direct link to that on Mastodon. And I also included a link to our social media tab on the website for other platforms that people could share it at. But I just had a couple of quick thoughts. So you're right about, in terms of like what servers are defined as 18 and up. In some cases, users can pick that. When you make the server, you can check if it's 18 and up or not. But Discord does also have a mechanism to automatically determine that the server is 18 and up. So on the one hand, it's like, well, it's only 18 up if people choose to make it that. But on the other hand, Discord does have like an automated way. So you're definitely, you make a really good point there, where like that could turn into a problem later. Like this is the same issue we've cited with things like on-device scanning of photos, right? Like, sure, right now it could be used for totally legitimate things like detecting CSAM and abuse. But what happens when an authoritarian government gets their hands on it and says, oh, now we want to identify people who were at a protest and stuff like that? So it could potentially be a slippery slope for sure. Real quick, I did actually go and find the restrictions for teen accounts. Where did that go? So there's content filters. We talked about that with the servers. Sensitive content will be blurred by default, and you will need to be quote unquote age assured in order to unblur sensitive content or turn off the setting. Age gate spaces, we already talked about that. Channels, servers, and app commands. Direct messages from people a user may not know are routed to a separate inbox by default, and access to modify this setting is limited to age assured users. People will receive warning prompts for friend requests from users they may not know, and only age-assured adults may speak on stage in servers. Which I don't even know what on stage is, but yeah. And then Yeah, real quick, I also found you sent me that Matrix blog post, thank you. And some of the things they say that they're missing is they're missing things like game streaming, push to talk, voice channels, custom emojis, extensible presence, richer hierarchical moderation, etc. And not to make this like a Matrix hate session, but I think to me personally, I ran my own community a couple years ago, and that was by a wide margin. The biggest thing that I struggled with was that the moderation tools in Matrix are honestly, to call them bare bones is being generous, because it's the things you would expect on any given platform. Like, you can ban a user from the room, you can create moderators, and you can set moderator permissions, and that's about it. And I mean, to be fair, I would argue Discord's built-in moderation tools are also absolute trash. But Discord also has a lot of third-party bots that are really good. At least some of them are really good. And again, I'm not trying to crap on the Matrix people, but like the Matrix bots, and I'm told, I don't know if this has changed because I haven't really been active on Matrix in a long time, but at the time that I was struggling with Matrix, I was told that the bot makers were really hindered by the APIs they could get from Matrix. So for example, on Discord, there are bots that will automatically kick somebody out if their account is under a certain age. Like if the account was made less than a week ago or 2 weeks ago, automatically booted, which is a great way to get rid of spammers because most of them just make a new account and join. But at the time that I was active on Matrix, the bot makers couldn't access that information. So they're like, we don't know how old an account is. We can't tell the bot to boot anybody who's under a certain age, which is, I don't know. And that's another concern of mine, because that was the big complaint with Mastodon, at least as I remember it, when Elon bought Twitter and everybody was leaving Twitter. And I remember a lot of people saying like, oh, there's not any good moderation tools on Mastodon. A lot of minority people don't feel safe there. I don't know how Twitter was not worse than that. It was Blue Sky. Everybody was going to Blue Sky because apparently Blue Sky had moderation tools. I don't know. But anyways, it's like, I feel like it's the same thing with Matrix. Like if there are not these tools to keep your users and your community safe, nobody's going to stick around there. Like I got my brother on Matrix for a while and he left after a while because he's like, yeah, I got tired of seeing people spam rooms with CSAM. Like yeah. All right. Anyways, it's just not a good landscape, unfortunately, I think. Oh, and there was, sorry, real quick. There's one last thing I do want to mention. Jonah raised a point in the chat earlier this week that some people think this is about Discord getting ready for IPO, because Discord is getting ready to go public. And I mean, this totally tracks in my book. Some people think that this is Discord trying to verify how many actual humans they have on their platform, because if they can show like, hey, 90% of our users are real people and we verified them and we know that makes their company that much more valuable. So I just wanted to make sure we presented that argument or that point.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people that have been using, like I was one of the original people who was like using Discord back in, I think 2015. And I feel like back then it was a much better platform than it is now, even though it had a lot less features, which is kind of unfortunate because I think since about, 2018, 2019, they've started adding all these, like, obviously they have to try and make money. This isn't like they've been dumping money into keeping this chat service alive, keeping it freemium. I think it's kind of inevitable that they're going to make it like really crap and add a bunch of annoying paid stuff. So, I mean, it definitely makes sense that they're trying to verify everyone's a real person. But I think one thing we should definitely check in here is we did get quite a few comments just while we were discussing stuff here. So I think I want to cover this one here from Blind Goose on Twitter. I think Apple and Google need to work on a digital ID where they verify your ID card, store it on your phone. They can, with permission, share just your age or more identifiable information if needed. When applying for a credit card, the storage can be 100% on device, meaning not even Apple or Google servers have that data. I mean, I think that would be, that would be the ideal situation for a digital ID, but I think there's other issues with digital ID systems. Like, for instance, we've already seen this a little bit, but a lot of websites that are being restricted aren't actually technically not safe for work or not safe for children. So it's got to be done in a way that, I mean, I would prefer if it didn't exist, because there's also that fact that there'll be Apple and Google is kind of becoming the what do you call it? The people who
Gatekeepers?
decide, gatekeepers, yeah, the people who decide if you're actually able to access something. And I think that's probably not the greatest outcome. We should be trying to push for things to be freely available. Same thing with the Discord communities, so I think it would be good if it was the only option, but it isn't the only option. There's also the option of not having age verification. So maybe we should do that instead. But that's my thought on it. And did you see any other questions here that we should probably quickly cover?
Yeah, there's one other I want to, or two, but one of them's really quick. And real quick, I just want to say I agree with you. Like, this is one of the things that frustrates me so much about age verification is we absolutely have the technical ability to have solutions that are much more privacy respecting, like what Discord is proposing here, where like everything stays on device and all they get is a yes or no token. And I'm not saying face scan. And like you said, there's definitely other problems with age verification, but it's like, this is just one more piece of the puzzle. It's like, why do we always have to go for the worst possible solution? But real quick, I wanted to point out, Anonymous 35 pointed out, he said, so they have a mechanism for when an adult is put in an underage category, but what happens when Discord accidentally makes a child overage? Which is, I think a really good point that I haven't heard before. And I don't know if it's necessarily like a big part of this argument, but I certainly think it's a really good point. Like, what happens when they mess up and a 16-year-old gets access to porn servers now? And yeah, that's not great. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is one of our YouTube users says, are there any alternatives to Discord? I mean, unfortunately, I do still think that Matrix is the best alternative we have. And I know I feel a little bad because we've sat here and talked about all the things the Matrix is missing. But, you mentioned that you used to use Discord back when it was still a lot more bare bones. And I think I saw a similar statement from somebody else. I can't find it now, but I think the issue is that there's this concept in psychology called the hedonic treadmill, where basically if you make any amount of money, like we'll just say you make decent money and then you get a raise and now you can afford like a nicer car or a nicer home or whatever. It's really hard to take that pay cut and downsize. Like, you could do it, obviously it's possible, but it's very difficult, and especially for people to do it willingly. And I think that's what's so hard is it's really hard for people to, now that they've had all these really nice features, like these custom emojis and these, fancy profiles that they can deck out with Nitro and stuff like that, I think it's just going to make it that much harder for people to scale back to something a little bit more bare bones, purely in the name of like, and especially in some servers where it's like, well, I still have to turn over my ID anyways. And, when they're dealing with potential encryption key issues, which I am still having to this day. I opened Matrix today for the first time in a long time, and half the messages are encrypted because of key issues and, things like that. It's just, I'm not saying that there aren't people who wouldn't be willing to do it. I'm just saying I think it's a really tough sell, and I think that's unfortunate. But
yeah. I mean, personally, I think no one's really talked about this so far, but I find Signal works perfectly fine as like a replacement for Discord. You can do group voice chats, group video calls. I guess it is a benefit of a centralized service because, there's only one server. There's not like a bunch of interoperability issues. So it could be worth trying Signal out, especially now because you don't have to share your phone number with people. So you can kind of do it anonymously. So I think that would be also a good alternative to try. But I think, yeah, there's not a lot of good alternatives that do everything, because Discord is sort of one of those applications where everything is just it just has all the features. But I would also issue a plea to people: please Stop putting everything behind a Discord server. Please use a website, use something. I don't want to have to sign up for Discord. Like, there's so many communities where they decide for whatever reason that their only community is going to be on Discord. They're going to store all the information in a Discord server. I think that's ridiculous. It's not accessible for everybody because you need a Discord account. And it's also just a bad way of displaying information. Like, who thought that putting things in chat channels and then just like, having to scroll around and search for messages is a good idea? Like, we have forums for that. We have websites for that, like wikis, so it's really frustrating that there's a whole bunch of information that is kind of inaccessible to people that don't have Discord. And I really hope that after this whole saga, a lot of people are going to start, moving things to platforms where there's no central authority that just decides, oh no, your server's now 18 plus, so no children allowed. And it could be for something completely benign. So I don't know. I'm just really frustrated with how many communities rely so heavily on Discord, and they don't seem to want to move to any other platform. And yeah, I've kind of just been trying to avoid getting Discord, but there's so many communities that I want to access because there's information in there that I need that I can't access otherwise. So anyway, that's just me ranting a little bit.
I just need to say that regarding your first point, I totally agree with you because like and I'll cut it short. But anyways, I've been in big servers where they just move too fast and I can't keep up with them. And like, I'm literally in one server just for the little name tag. I never even go in there because there's tens of thousands of users. And every time I check, there's a conversation going on and I don't know what's going on and I don't know anybody in there. I know that makes it a feedback loop, but my point being like, yeah, it drives me insane when they're like, oh, our support channel, our primary support channel is Discord. And it's like, why? Like, what if I join and I can't get help because there's 10,000 other people chatting and nobody sees my question? And I know some of them have like a little ticket system that you can open things, but it's just, yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. To me, it feels like a very sloppy, it's almost like Reddit. Like, no offense to Reddit, some offense to Reddit, but when somebody like a company is like, oh, our, Reddit is where you follow us or open support ticket, it's just like, that's not a support channel, man. That's just lazy. So I'm with you. I don't like that either.
Yeah, there's been so many times when I've been like, oh, I'll join this. I guess I have to make a Discord account. I know, I'll just use like a burner phone number and a burner email. And then I sign into the server and then I get booted instantly because there's an age policy. You can't have an account that was just created. It's just really annoying to deal with anyone that has their only community on Discord. And I think now is the best time to diversify, just have another community. Like, you don't have to get rid of the old one. You can open another one somewhere else. Like, you can start a wiki as well as a Discord. You can start a discourse forum as well as a Discord. Just have another option, because if Discord does go to crap, then at least you have another option for communicating. So anyway.
Totally.
It is what it is.
All right. I believe you've got the next story here about Google.
Yes. So this next story comes from Ars Technica. Upgraded Google safety tools can now find and remove more of your personal info. The Results About You tool is getting an upgrade. So this is actually a tool that we suggest to use at Privacy Guides because it does enable you to basically enter your personal information and have Google periodically check Google search results for information that appears about you. And this is kind of useful because, if there's things like your address, your phone number, your email address showing up in Google searches, that could be a safety issue. So that is why we do recommend, if you don't have any other option, if you don't want to do it like manually all the time, it is something that we do recommend to do because, it's gonna be able to find that information and alert you if it's actually found. So this is basically an upgrade to that. So Google's had that feature for a while, but now it's actually getting an extra layer of abilities. So with today's upgrade, Results About You gains the ability to find and remove pages that include ID numbers, like your passport, driver's license, and social security. And you can access the option to add these to Google's ongoing scans from the settings in Results About You. Just click the ID numbers section to enable detection. Naturally, Google has to know what it's looking for to remove it, so you need to provide at least part of those numbers. Google asks for the full driver's license number, which is fine as it's not as sensitive. And for your passport and SSN, you only need the last 4 digits, which is good enough for Google to find the full numbers on web pages. So this is kind of good to see that there's more safety tools being built into Google search, because a lot of times, things can get indexed that we don't want to. It's good to have control over having those listings removed because, like I said before, it can be a safety issue for some people. But I do think in this case, you are trusting Google with that information. And I don't think there's, I think Google is not exactly the most trustworthy company. And it will definitely depend on the level of safety that you care about, right? So if you're being targeted constantly and this is like quite a big threat to you, then maybe you would be more likely to enroll in this program. So for instance, you're like a public figure or something, and you probably do want to get notified every time something pops up because you don't want that listed. That could definitely make sense. If you're just an everyday person, I think just periodically searching your name, your address, your phone number, that sort of thing is probably enough for most people, but I think this is definitely an interesting thing here. I guess having a look at the rest of this here, it looks like there's a tool that identifies explicit images as well as deep fakes. So that is also another thing that, a lot of people deal with. I think this is also kind of aimed towards people who work in the sex work industry. They probably don't want information associated with their work, associated with their real name. That's definitely something that some people would prefer not to have. So that is something that can remove some of that content, or, at least blur the content. So that's another thing that they added as well. So it's definitely an interesting update. And I think in general, this is a good thing, even if it's coming from like the worst company ever. I think this is going to protect a lot of people from a lot of issues that, certain public figures, people working in the sex work industry. I think that's definitely going to be beneficial, as well as just public figures as well. So yeah, that's kind of my initial thoughts on this story.
Yeah. I will say I don't know if it's just aimed at sex workers. I don't know how actually prevalent it is. I haven't seen any specific numbers, but I know 404 Media has covered several stories about just normal women who have been targeted by deepfakes, and they've covered, I've lost track of how many, and I say just normal women in the sense of like, they're not famous, they're not sex workers, they just have the quote unquote crime of being attractive. And, they've been covering stories about tons of, they call them nudify apps, where you can feed it a picture and the AI will generate what she might look like naked. They've covered tons of like, oh man, it just slipped out of my head. But yeah, they've covered tons of stories like that. And so unfortunately, and again, I haven't seen any statistics, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm downplaying it. I'm just trying to give an honest level read. I don't know if this is like a huge epidemic or if those are just a handful of stories that are really unfortunate. But either way, I think this is an actual problem that doesn't just affect sex workers. It could affect anybody. But I think you still do make a really good point of, that's trusting Google with a lot of data. And I do want to point out that Google has really good security. Google has never, to my knowledge, had a major data breach. But you're still trusting them not to use that data for advertising, for tracking, for all the other things that Google's multi-billion-dollar empire is built on. So yeah, it's definitely one of those cost benefit analysis things where you have to ask yourself, like, do I think this is enough of a problem that I should go ahead and sign up for this? Or like you said, would it be better if I handled this myself? If I did an occasional search, set myself reminders in my calendar or whatever. So, because yeah, that is a lot of sensitive information to be handing over to Google for sure.
No, that's a good point you brought up about some of those apps, like the Notify apps. I think that's very much a problem, especially with minors. A lot of this stuff is, happening in high schools. It's, using these apps on people who are under the age of 18, publishing this information online to kind of embarrass people. It's pretty bad. And I think that is another good use case here. I guess I kind of missed that when I was looking over it the first time. So I think that's also kind of another benefit of this as well. But I think, it's at the end of the day, this is not a tool for everybody. It's a tool for a very specific group of people. And I think if you are in that group of people, then this would make sense. But if it's, I think a lot of people in our community are just not going to trust any big tech company, but and especially now because we've seen a lot of this. For instance, we might talk about this next week, but Google handing over data to law enforcement without proper oversight, just handing it over and giving them all this information doesn't seem like a particularly good idea in that case. So it's kind of hard to justify pushing this unless you're in a very specific situation. I think, like Nate said, just doing a Google search of your information every now and then is definitely going to be a better way to, protect your information. But I think this is also a tool that is applicable for some people. So I think it's important that we covered it. But I guess moving on to our next story here, also from Google. Nate, what are we talking about next?
All right, our next story is about how Google recovered deleted footage from a doorbell camera, which raises a lot of questions. So for anyone who doesn't really follow the news super closely, there is a woman named Nancy Guthrie. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right. I've only read it in articles. I haven't seen any videos. And she is a mother of three, one of whom is a journalist for, I believe it's NBC. And she was reported missing, she being Nancy, not the journalist. She was reported missing on February 1st. And her family called in a welfare check. She's from Arizona, if I remember correctly. And the police showed up and said that they had reason to believe that she was taken. She didn't just wander off or anything. And initially, the police said, okay, so a real quick piece of context here. Google Nest cameras, which are kind of like Google's competitor to Ring, which we will also talk about here in a little bit. Google's Nest cameras, by default, if you just buy the camera itself and you don't buy the service, according to this article, they save 3 hours of quote unquote event history, which for the record, this is coming from Ars Technica, not like Google's actual documentation. So I apologize if this is wrong, but this is what Ars Technica says. Events are anything that like triggers the doorbell. So it wouldn't be 3 continuous hours of history. It would be any time in the last 3 hours that say, somebody dropped something off at your door, a delivery was made, somebody knocked on your door, whatever. If you pay $10 a month, you get 30 days of events. $20 gets 60 days of events plus 10 days of full video, which I got to be honest is a pretty good deal. But anyways, so they, the reason this matters is because Nancy Guthrie had a Ring doorbell, or excuse me, a Nest doorbell. And Initially, investigators, to be fair, not Google, but investigators said there's no footage because she wasn't paying for the service. And then suddenly, what is this, the 13th? 3 days ago, on February 10th, suddenly the police came forward and said, actually, here's some footage. Does anybody know this man? And again, I've only seen screenshots, even though it's here in the footage. I was very busy all day. I couldn't watch videos. But excuse me. They say the first video shows the person approaching the door and noticing the doorbell camera. They place their hand over the lens and appear to pull on the mounting bracket, but the cameras have a small security screw that makes it difficult to remove them without causing damage. I don't know why he cared about causing damage if he's kidnapping somebody, but whatever. In the second video, the individual seems to try to drape a plant over the camera to block its view. Both videos are short, which is what you would expect from an event as identified by the Google Home system. So they say the video was apparently, quote unquote, recovered from residual data located in back-end systems. And Ars Technica says it's unclear how long such data is retained or how easy it is for Google to access it. Some reports claim that it took several days for Google to recover the data. So this story raises a lot of questions. And I think there's a lot of ways you could look at it. And I'm not necessarily saying one is right or wrong, because honestly, I don't really know how I feel about this. I think on the one hand, there is, I think most of our more technical viewers know this, but in case you guys didn't, when you click delete on something on a computer, it typically doesn't delete it. You know, it basically tells the computer, you can write over this if you want. It's kind of like if you guys have ever worked at a job where, or it's like a dumpster. Let's put it that way. It's like if you're driving through a neighborhood and somebody has put like a couch or a table on the corner, it's not necessarily gone yet, but they don't want it. You can take it if you want. It's kind of like that. And so just because something is deleted in a system doesn't necessarily mean it's fully gone. Now, the longer it's been, the more likely that it has been written over by something else and it is actually gone. But usually, especially if it's right away, usually you can pull back most or all of the data. So it's really hard to tell exactly what's going on here. And I do want to acknowledge we could do the conspiracies. I don't mean to be rude, but we could do the conspiracy theory thing where they say, no, they had it the whole time. They're just pretending this is a story. You might be right. I'm going to acknowledge that. You might be right. We don't know. It's also equally possible that they just have literal warehouses around the world full of servers and they got lucky and dug through and found some stuff. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I don't know how many nests there are. I don't know how much server storage there is. It seems like a bit of a stretch to me that within a week, it wouldn't all be overwritten if she wasn't paying. It is weird. I will admit that. But I guess I'm just saying this isn't necessarily a smoking gun, but it certainly is weird. And I think one of the reasons we're talking about this is because this is a big story that was like everybody's been talking about. But also, I think this is a good reminder that, I mean, everything I just said, you know, when you hit delete, something isn't necessarily gone right away. And that's why it's really important to think about things like, these days, everybody's mostly switched over to solid states, and solid states, it used to be that when you would delete something, the common advice was to use like a file shredder, which would basically, like I talked about, it would mark it for deletion and then it would overwrite it a couple times to make sure it was like really gone. But with solid states, I guess you could do that, but you shouldn't because it really reduces the lifespan of the device. And instead we rely on things like full disk encryption. You know, if somebody stormed in right now and took my computer and it died, they wouldn't be able to get back into it without decrypting it. And that functionally serves the same purpose. But I guess to kind of bring it back around, when you upload anything, you know, anything that's cloud connected like this, even if they say like, we're not going to keep this stuff, let's just go ahead and assume Google was being honest here. It was still there. You know, they can't, them saying we're not going to keep it is not the same as them saying we're going to delete it. It's them saying like, if it gets overwritten, it gets overwritten. We don't care that you're not paying for that service, and it could still be there. And in this case, hopefully it will help find this woman safe and sound, you know, but there's a lot of other cases where it could be a bad thing and it could recover something that you wanted to stay gone. So yeah, it's just really important to keep that kind of stuff in mind, I think. I think those were my thoughts. Did you have any other takeaways from the story, Jordan?
Yeah, so I think this is sort of a confirmation of something that we've been assuming but not knowing for quite a while. Google doesn't really delete things. They have data for a long time. They don't actually abide by a lot of the policies they have. I mean, I just think that when it's a company as large as Google, just think about the absolute amount of data that they have. I think it's almost impossible to, they've probably got data centers in basically every city in a lot of these major countries. And it's this whole interconnected network where all this information is just like zooming around the internet. I think it's really hard for them to delete a lot of things. And I think the same thing goes for this, right? Maybe that footage was saved, and it was saved and backed up across 6 continents or something, because obviously Google doesn't want to lose that data because people rely on the security camera footage. So I think in this case, it could have been that the storage of this video clip could have been in a backup, or across a lot of data centers. And I think all it took really was for a high profile case. They're obviously not going to do this for your average person, but I think because this was such a high profile case, I'm not entirely sure who this person is. So maybe they're not that high profile, but they seem to be. And I think it just shows that Google does have the ability to, bring back data that is allegedly deleted. So it brings up more questions about data retention. Like, how long is Google really keeping things for? When they say that your information is deleted, how true are they being? And I would argue probably not very true. It's probably stuck in backups. It's probably stuck in, whole systems like training LLMs, all sorts of things that, we don't have control over. So I'm not really surprised that they were able to recover this footage. I think this is kind of pretty standard stuff. I'm not sure why people were, I guess, so outraged. I think this is pretty standard for a company to have, backups lasting quite a long time. And, they're not going to immediately delete the footage. So I think it is possible for them to dig up footage in very extreme circumstances like this. So I don't know. I am not particularly surprised by this story in particular.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I don't know if I'm surprised or not. I think when I first heard this story, I was kind of like, oh, that's crazy. But I wasn't just like, what? Oh my God, that's crazy. I was just like, whoa. So yeah, it's yeah. I don't think I have much to add. I really agree with your point about once they have that data, you lose control over it functionally, one way or another, like for better or worse. Again, even if, like, let's assume, just for the sake of argument, let's assume total good faith on Google's end. What if they do have a data breach someday? They finally get got, and who knows what'll get leaked. They could use it for AI. They could use it for anything. So it's just really important to keep that in mind with anything you do online, I think.
Yeah. And I think this brings forward actually another thing that we should probably talk about is the reason why Google had this footage in the first place was because the camera was not end-to-end encrypted. So I think this is kind of an important note. Google is kind of known for being really not very, not applying a lot of these practices where, companies like Ring has other problems. We're gonna talk about that later. But companies like Ring, Apple, they allow you to at least enable that encryption. So, if it was incriminating information or just private, you don't really want recordings of yourself doing who knows what outside your house or inside your house, available to a massive corporation, which could get breached. So I think it's important to, if you do have, a camera system, maybe think about something local, maybe think about something that employs end-to-end encryption. I know a pretty easy option for a lot of people who have Apple devices is Apple's HomeKit Secure Video, which has end-to-end encryption. And, there's other local alternatives as well, setting up like an NVR. A lot of people in the comments of this article were talking about, this is why I only use local surveillance systems. But I think there's also issues with that as well, because, a lot of people don't own the house or apartment that they live in. They can't just go around drilling holes in things and like putting cables everywhere. That's just unrealistic. So, I think it's not always going to be a perfect solution. There's no perfect solution for everybody. So that's why I think you should think about this. But I think, you're putting Google, you're trusting Google with like the privacy of your home. I think we need to question why you're doing that. You should probably consider moving to something that offers high levels of security, such as Apple HomeKit Secure Video or some other local alternative. I know, and maybe Jonah would have something to add on this. I feel like he's kind of into that whole like home assistant self-hosted stuff, but unfortunately he's not here this week, but that's okay. I guess I would throw it over to you, Nate. Do you have any experience with these sort of like security systems?
I don't, because I am in that boat you talked about where I'm one of those people who rents. And so I can't really, and thankfully some places I've lived actually do have policies against outdoor cameras like Ring, which I think is super awesome, but not all of them do. And yeah, it's actually my last apartment. I remember they had like a Ring or a Nest up in the corner and it was facing the only in and out for the building. And it pissed me off so much, but yeah, it's really I wish I had more. Hold on, let me check I swear I saw somebody post talking about one the other day. I'm checking a group chat I'm in, but
All right. While you're doing that, I think it's also important to note that, when you're installing all these security systems, like Nate was saying, you can invade other people's privacy too. It's important that, I think some people get sort of caught up on, I'm just protecting my privacy. I don't care about other people. It's like, no, other people recording other people without their consent is wrong. It's not right. It's invading their privacy. So, especially with these camera systems, I think it's important to remember that if you install a doorbell like this that's pointing out towards the street and recording everybody as they enter their houses and walk past, it's kind of creepy, and it's definitely something we're going to talk about later. So definitely stay tuned for that. But Nate, did you end up finding that post you were looking for?
I did. I'm not going to say who it came from because I did not ask permission. This is off the cuff, but it is somebody who is very knowledgeable and knows what they're talking about. They said that if you need, what was it? Wise, WYZE. They say they recommend it. He did specify for mainstream people. So this is not like the most private solution, but he said that it does accept SD cards. And you do need to download their app to like set it up initially. But once you set it up, you can tell it like not to send anything to the cloud and only record an SD card. So make sure you mount it somewhere where they can't just like tear it off the wall and take it. And then he said that in the past, he's recommended ZOSI for, he said that's a bigger setup with multiple cameras that sends wirelessly to a local DVR or hard drive, like you see in convenience stores or gas stations. So that might not be realistic for some people, but one more thing that I remembered while you were talking, you mentioned that Ring does have an end-to-end encryption. I think you have to enable it. I don't think it's enabled by default, but they do offer it. You mentioned Apple usually does better. I actually learned recently that Google's in-browser password manager is like the only one that's not encrypted by default, Google Chrome. So like Safari is, Firefox is, I should hope Brave is, but like Google Chrome is the only browser where like you can save passwords in the browser, but you still have to take that extra step to go in and encrypt the password manager, which is completely insane and just backs up what you were saying about the fact that like Google is a little bit sketchy, which is so weird because just a minute ago I was like, they have some of the best security, except when they don't. It's just so insane. So yeah, be mindful of that. Google is not always as trustworthy as they should be for a company of their size.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an unfortunate thing, but I think they do have, just like I was saying before, their infrastructure is like quite modern. It's quite a large operation. So obviously they do have some security policies to protect things. So it's kind of stupid that they don't have end-to-end encryption on passwords by default. That's like a thing you have to enable. Like they can access all your browsing data, like your bookmarks and all that. You have to enable encryption on that. But with that being said, let's dive into the site updates this week. And before we dive into a story about how Reddit is being monitored by the DHS, let's give some quick updates about what we've been working on at Privacy Guides this week. So, throwing it over to you, Nate. What have you been working on this week?
Yeah, it's been a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I'm working on a script for, oh my gosh, I should know this, private email. And yeah, so that's what's next in the pipeline for me. That's been my main focus. And then we have private browsing and the intermediate smartphone security are both ready for members. We're just coordinating with infrastructure. I know we keep saying this every week, but we're really having some serious issues with PeerTube. And I think Jonah is doing his best to take care of that. But yeah, as soon as we get that worked out, we're going to push those out to members and then shortly thereafter to the public. So that is what I have been up to. And I believe you have been up to some stuff as well.
Yes. So this week, I've been working on a video that Nate put together. It was a video about private messaging. So that's another one to look out for. We're kind of covering off these base topics just to have, resources for everyone to access. And I was also working on doing some social posts this week because I feel like we've been kind of slouching a bit on that, and we haven't been doing it as much as we should, and there's a whole bunch of important issues going on that we need to talk about. So I decided to put together something about Discord and alternatives to Discord and such. So if you want to check that out, that's available on most of our social feeds that are text-based as well as photo-based. Some of them might need to wait a little bit to go out, but yeah, Nate's showing it here on Mastodon. So that's kind of what I've been working on. I also put together another post for Valentine's Day, and it was kind of a funny one. Look out for it tomorrow. Hopefully that does well and people think it's a good idea. But I just want to remind people that all of this is made possible by our supporters, and you can sign up for a membership or donate at privacyguides.org. Or you can also pick up some cool swag at shop.privacyguides.org. And you can see in the background, Nate's got a poster there and a bottle. And, we've got all these products you can get if you want to support us and also get something in return. And now, finally, let's talk about Ring's new search party tool. Dystopian Ring Search Party feature sparks public backlash. So this is an article here from 9to5Mac, and I should preface this by saying there was an ad at the Super Bowl, which I think is like an American football event for anyone not from America. And basically it's the ad focused around utilizing everybody's Ring doorbells and Ring cameras to basically find and help lost dogs. And it was basically a 30-second ad promoting this new feature. And of course, this is kind of a massive concern from a privacy perspective, obviously, because, a company that's basically has all these cameras everywhere and they're using it to, identify something and track that thing. That could be used for some really dystopian stuff, obviously. So that is kind of concerning. So here's just kind of explaining how this works. The search party feature for dogs works by allowing owners of lost dogs to send a photo and description to other nearby Ring doorbell users. When the camera thinks it has spotted a dog matching the description, it alerts the homeowner. If they confirm that it looks like the right dog, it puts them in touch with the owner of the pet. The company has now rolled out the feature to non-Ring camera owners via the Ring app, going all in on promoting it, including with a whole Super Bowl ad, which, as far as I understand, Super Bowl is kind of like a really high-profile event. That would have probably costed like tens of millions of dollars. So they're definitely kind of going all in on this. And this is also another concern because in the US, there's been a lot of nationwide protests against ICE operations, which is quite concerning. And there's also people who are kind of concerned that this could be used to coordinate ICE operations to deport and arrest people. So just quoting from 404 Media here, at Sunday's Super Bowl, Ring advertised Search Party, a cute, horrifyingly dystopian feature nominally designed to turn all of the Ring cameras into a neighborhood dragnet that uses AI to look for a lost dog. It does not take an imagination of any sort to envision this being tweaked to work against suspected criminals, undocumented migrants, or others deemed suspicious by people in the neighborhood. Many of these use cases are how Ring has been used by people on its dystopian Neighbors app for years. The Neighbors app itself, I haven't heard of this before, so just quoting what the article says, the Neighbors app quickly got a reputation for racists sharing reports of supposedly suspicious-looking people whose skin color was the only thing they had in common. So yeah, this is kind of concerning. It goes through, a lot of the other social media backlash and such in this article. And I think this is kind of highlighting an issue that I talked about before where, your privacy is important, but also the privacy of other people. Creating a dragnet surveillance network is just to find dogs seems like a pretty unequal exchange, especially because this technology can be used for kind of nefarious purposes, like by ICE to, round up people, follow protesters, all sorts of stuff like that. I think it kind of goes against a lot of things that you would expect in public. Like you would expect in public that your location isn't going to be tracked. And in this case, it's basically, using cameras to use facial recognition to identify dogs. But you can see how that could be used against people, right? I think this is sort of a thing that we've talked about a little bit in other countries. They have a lot of these facial recognition networks that are run by governments that, identify people and track their movements across the country. And I think this is basically just doing the same thing, but with it's cute. It's a dog searching tool. It's the same thing. It's going to be a slope where they do this feature now, and then in a year's time they're using it to track protesters. They're using it to track immigrants. They're using it to track, I don't know, the next choice of who they're wanting to follow. So yeah, I think this is extremely dystopian, and I think most people need to kind of look past the advertising and marketing here and look at what the real issue with this technology is, because it is quite concerning.
Yeah, just to touch on a few things you said. Yes, the Super Bowl is, you would think, a religion here in the US. People lose their minds for it. I say that as somebody who, if sports vanished tomorrow, the only reason I would notice is because everybody else around me would be having a meltdown. But putting aside my hipsterism, yeah, it's a huge deal. And so for them to run this ad was probably, I don't know about tens of millions. I mean, maybe tens of millions, but definitely millions for sure. To run that 30-second ad is pretty wild. I think I'm really happy. What I picked up on in this story is this has been like a nationwide outcry. Like the article says, like, in addition to the 404 article that you wrote or you read about, a Senator Ed Markey tweeted and said, what this ad doesn't show, Ring also rolled out facial recognition for humans. I wrote to them months ago about this. Their answer, they won't ask for your consent. This definitely isn't about dogs. It's about mass surveillance. And then they said a quick search on X shows this to be the prevailing view. So I know that's like a very specific slice of the internet, but I'm very happy to see, because so many of the times I'm a little bit annoyed, and I'm going to try not to be like, I don't know. It's not old man yells at clouds, but something hipster, I guess. I don't know. I'm a little bit annoyed that I feel like we as privacy advocates are constantly trying to raise an alarm about like, hey guys, this is bad. And people are like, you need to calm down. You're overreacting. This isn't a big deal. And then like 3 years later, something happens and everybody is like, oh, this is bad. And it's like, yeah, I've been saying that for years. And you told me I was overreacting. And, we didn't include it, but I've been sharing around tonight a story from Meta where they're reintroducing their Ray-Ban glasses, but they're including facial recognition. And there's a quote here. I can dig it up real quick. Not to go too far off topic, but this is from Meta's Reality Labs. This is from the actual company that made the glasses. They said, we will launch during a dynamic political environment where many civil society groups that we would expect to attack us would have their resources focused on other concerns. And that is like the most cartoon villain thing I've ever heard. It's like, I almost think it just sounds like it should be in The Onion for them to just say the quiet part out loud, where it's like, oh, this is the perfect time to do something downright evil because all of our enemies are busy with other things. And and I bring that up because like I've been sharing it around and everybody I'm showing it to is just like, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. I can't believe that. And it's like, yeah, they're like, I've been trying to tell you guys that. And I'm not trying to do the, like, I told you so thing. It's just like, I wish people had cared, 5 years ago or 10 years ago with Cambridge Analytica, when all this stuff started coming out and like, I don't know, maybe we couldn't have stopped it. Cause like, I don't want to sound defeatist, but Shoshana Zuboff in Age of Surveillance Capitalism, she talks about how like this is their playbook, is they'll do something, and when people get mad, they pull back a little bit, but then they kind of just like take a different direction to get around the obstacle, and they still end up doing it anyways, which is why we can't really trust a lot of big tech companies. But I don't know, it's just it's frustrating to see things that you're trying to raise the alarm about, and sometimes it feels like people don't take it seriously. And I'm glad, where I'm going with this is I'm really glad to see that people are taking this seriously, that everybody is sitting up, and it's not just us for a change. That's like, this could be bad. It's like everybody is just kind of like, okay, nope, this is too far. You crossed a line. This is creepy. I don't want it. And I guess I'm just going to say, I hope that we're finally entering an age where things will be different. Because again, I mentioned that typically tech will pull back just enough until people calm down, and then they'll go do it anyways. And I really hope that we're entering a world where the internet has been around long enough and the tech companies have been around long enough that we're kind of wising up to it, and we're not going to let them do that. I hope. I don't know. We'll see. But I really hope that's where we're headed. So yeah, those were my thoughts on that story.
Yeah, I think I largely agree with what you're saying. I think it's also, I'm seeing some comments here in the chat, so just kind of going over some of these. Someone said it's FailX on tour. This is a bit of a political question. With its exploitative nature, do you think that other camera systems could adopt Ring's infrastructure in the future? And I think it definitely could be. I think if it's successful, and I unfortunately a lot of times these awful things end up being pushed through. Like Nate was saying, it's like you're boiling the frog. People just you're just slowly boiling them. People will just give up with trying to push back against things because they're just constantly trying to push things through. So I think if it's a success for Ring, I think, this feature could be rolled out to other security cameras, but I still think, it would be, I'm not really sure what the percentage is, but I bet that there is a very large percent of people, at least in America. I haven't seen too many Ring doorbells and things in Australia. I think they're less popular, like Amazon in general is less popular. So I think in the US that there's just a lot of those cameras everywhere. So I think it is pretty powerful being able to have so many cameras everywhere and to always have the ability to hook into them. So, I think if you have a Ring camera, the best time to get rid of it was yesterday, and the second best time is today. So try and work something out, because I think it's not great for the privacy of other people. And it seems like this is just going to get pushed through. They've already dumped so much money into it. They're not going to just start changing direction on doing this facial recognition or dog recognition. But well, that's how they're marketing it, but we all know it's going to eventually get rolled out to humans. Do you see any other questions here you think we should touch on?
I actually do want to touch on, because you said that this next question or not question, but a statement from Anonymous 35. You said basically, if the market dislikes this, no one will follow suit, which is true. I don't want to get into free market and all that, but I just want to point out, like, kind of related to what you said, I think so much, and it's no single snowflake believes it is responsible for the avalanche. I don't know who said that, but like, it's so easy to look at these things. Like you were saying, like Ring doorbells are so ubiquitous here in the US, and so many people have them, and they bring a benefit. I'm not going to lie. Like, yes, obviously they bring a benefit, or else people wouldn't be buying them. And I get it, but it's so easy for people to sit here and think like, well, what can I do? You know, like I get something out of it. If I throw away my doorbell, like you said, they're just going to do it anyways. It doesn't matter. And it's like, yes, I hear you. And I know it sounds hard, but if enough people do it, it makes a difference. Something like, what is it? Like 60% of the people in the US vote that are eligible to vote. So almost half of the US doesn't vote. And that's high turnout, by the way, really bad. And so just think about, if those other 40% of people voted, what would, like, maybe the political situation wouldn't change. Maybe it would, who knows? But that's 40% of the people that could potentially change the vote, because every single one of them is like, oh, my vote doesn't matter. And I'm sorry, I know I'm being a little political, kind of, sort of, not really. But my point being is, like, we're at a point, and I hate to say this because it sounds defeatist, we're at a point where the privacy situation in the world is so bad that doing almost anything moves the needle. And I try to tell people that when I talk to like mainstream users, and they just feel like, oh, well, my data's already out there. What does it matter? They already know everything about me. And it's like, yeah, that's the point. The bar is so freaking low that doing literally anything, switching to Brave or Firefox, shoot, putting uBlock Origin in Chrome, as bad as Chrome is, just putting uBlock Origin in there, tweaking a few settings, taking some apps off your phone. Like, most people are literally doing nothing. Doing literally anything will move the needle. And so where I'm going with that is, like, if you're one of those people, or you know one of those people who's like, well, I genuinely get value out of my Ring doorbell and I feel like throwing it away won't make a difference, turn on the end-to-end encryption. Because at least then Ring can't access your footage without your permission. And at least then you're like cutting off this whole search party feature. And it sends, like Anonymous was saying, if enough people do it, it sends that message of like, I want control over my data. And if enough people start sending that message, the market will start to pivot that way. I mean, look at Apple. Apple ran a whole campaign advertising privacy, and you could argue that they're not private enough. That's fine. I accept that. But the point is, like, they knew that that's something that matters to people, and they want to start pivoting in that direction. And so, like, yeah, it's every little bit helps. That's what I'm getting at, is like every little thing, whether it's throwing the camera away entirely, whether it's canceling the subscription, whether it's turning on the encryption, like anything to send the message of, I don't like this, and I want privacy respected. I think on a mass scale, if enough people do that, it will add up. It will create an avalanche. So yeah, that's my opinion on that one.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing to promote here. I think, yeah, more people need to make changes. Like, yeah, it's not only going to be one person that changes things, but I guess we can also move on here to kind of a spooky story here about Reddit. So here we have the Homeland security spying on Reddit users. So do you want to take this one, Nate?
Yeah, it is my turn, isn't it? All right. So I think this will be potentially a quick story, because I think we've seen stories like this in the past, or maybe it's just me in my past work. I know I've definitely covered stories like this, but this story is a really interesting write-up, and it focuses on, common journalistic technique is like you tell one person's story and you use that to kind of extrapolate to a larger trend. And so that's what this person did here. They talk about Homeland Security is spying on Reddit users. And this one is really interesting. So specifically, there's a Reddit user called BudgetChicken2425. I love randomly generated names. They're so fun. At least I hope that's a randomly generated name. If not, I really want to hear the story behind it. But anyways, so this actually happened in January. This is very recent. And this is an internal report that was leaked to this reporter. And it talks about how Homeland Security officials in Texas were monitoring this user, who, as far as we know, is not a narco trafficker, a gang member, or a terrorist. The report centers on Budget Chicken's call for a protest near a Border Patrol facility in Edinburgh, Texas, which I lived in Texas for 10 years and I don't even know where that is. I just want to point that out. Maybe I'm the idiot, but it's not like it's Dallas. It's not, it sounds to me like at best it's a suburb of a major city. So the report acknowledges that anti-ICE protests throughout Texas have been quote unquote generally lawful, and there's no evidence of any threat posed by this user's call. Any protest whatsoever near the border facility is said to warrant continued monitoring. And then there's a screenshot of the actual report here. To quote directly from the bulletin, at this time, there's no specific reporting of planned violence targeting DHS personnel or facilities linked to this protest call. However, any demonstration in proximity to a U.S. Border Patrol Rio Grande Valley facility may present operational safety and reputational risks that warrant continued monitoring. I'll actually just read it because it's real short. So there's a screenshot here for audio listeners of a Reddit post from this Budget Chicken guy in r/Rio Grande Valley, Rio Grande. Again, lived in Texas for 10 years. They pronounce everything wrong. So sorry if I pronounce it wrong. He says, join me in protest against ICE. He says, in light of today's events, I'm rallying people to support our rights and freedoms, not just for ourselves, but for our neighbors, family, and community. We need volunteers to be witnesses and to spread awareness. The more we are silent, the faster it will come to us. I will be at the intersection of 281 and Trenton by the Border Patrol station around 6. Please come support. That's the whole post. So where exactly is it? There's a, well, okay, here's where he starts tying it into a bigger thing. He said there's a section that gives a sense of the sheer volume of data Homeland Security collects to generate a big picture view of what's going on in the country. One specific priority asks what group or individuals are responsible for or are associated with border violence and what are the intended impact to Customs and Border Patrol personnel and operations. They say that they are tracking 3 particular social media trends, which is social media-driven mobilization, symbolic targeting of government facilities, and a statewide baseline of mobilization potential. At the risk of being a little biased, I want to point out, none of those said anything about violence. Mobilization is literally just like getting people out. So like social media-driven mobilization, so like posting online like that guy just did, like, hey, I'm going to go protest. Everybody come with me. Like, didn't say anything about violence, just people coming to protest. And in other words, the government is building a sociological profile of political discontent. The bulletin notes that these protests are perception-driven, meaning they are motivated by general concerns about rights rather than specific incidents. Excuse me, I haven't had enough water today. So it's to determine the threat posed by Budget Chicken 2425, analysts didn't just look at the protest call, they scored the user's entire digital footprint. The bulletin notes that Chicken, quote, frequently participates in various community discussions. For example, in r/Texans, they compared the team to the Cleveland Browns. In r/movies, they discussed the film Almost Famous. Never seen it personally. r/Stephen King shares his book collection. And I don't know if I can curse and not get us demonetized. I've cursed before. So r/fuck I'm old, reminiscing about the 1970s television production logos. And here's... okay, I'll go ahead and say right here that up until this point, I was like, this is really invasive and I'm not condoning it. But I completely understand they need to like know what's going on. They need to keep an eye on threats. And just because this dude hasn't said anything doesn't mean he's not going to do anything. So I understand the like, hey, let's just keep an eye out on this. This is the part where they lost me. It is recommended that all agents wear their ballistic armor, utilize long arms, and if possible, work in groups. Personal opinion, based on military history and training, that sounds a little excessive in response to a dude who said, hey, let's go stand on the corner and chant some slogans. Again, is it possible he might do something? Absolutely. Should you keep an eye on it? Absolutely. Should you escalate straight to rifles and body armor? I don't know about that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just a little bit too much of a hippie these days, but yeah, to me, that was pretty wild. But anyways, personal opinions aside, the point here is the social media monitoring. I mentioned that this story is not really unique. It's just recent. In the past, I have talked about stories of government monitoring, all kinds of social media networks, and not just the big ones, not just, Facebook and TikTok and Reddit. I mean, there's small niche ones that are built for very specific communities. Discord servers, the government, I can go dig up this source if I have to, but I swear I've read stories about how on some of the bigger Discord servers, they will literally just throw sock puppet accounts in there to scrape up the messages so that they can search them later. And it's just, that's actually I found this out recently. That's actually what Palantir does. That's their whole claim to fame, is Palantir doesn't actually collect any data. They build the databases that link all the data together, and that they can sell it to governments and law enforcement, and then they can search that database. So this is all powering the surveillance state. And yeah, it's a reminder to be careful what you post online. It's a reminder that anything you put in a digital format gets swept up. It's a reminder that, unfortunately, this is happening. It's just a reminder to remember that on any platform. Again, it's not just the big stuff like Reddit and Discord. It's the small niche stuff. Anywhere they think something might be happening, they're trying to get a foothold in there. I guarantee it. So that is what I took away from that. I don't know if you had anything to
add. Yeah, I guess like some basic thoughts here. Generally, I was under the impression that, law enforcement, I assume like Homeland Security is law enforcement, I guess. I'm not really too privy about that.
Homeland Security is, it's hard to explain what Homeland Security is. It's technically a type of law enforcement. It's the federal arm of the government. They generally handle like border security and that kind of stuff. I'll let you go ahead and talk. I'm going to look it up exactly what it is. But yeah, they're kind of like a federal law enforcement for the border.
Right. So I think let's just go ahead and assume that they are sort of law enforcement-esque, I guess. I'm not really familiar. I'm not American, so I'm just assuming. But I think that generally I was under the impression that, in most places that were, a free country, a country where, people's privacy is respected, that, police officers or law enforcement in general wouldn't go poking around and start building a case against someone unless there was a suspicion of a crime. And I don't see how organizing a protest is any sort of suspicion for a crime. That everyone is perfectly within their rights to do so. So I think that's the number one concerning thing. Like this is like the sort of thing we talk about when we're like talking about, Russia, like they have Russian agents on social media, just like, trolling social media, looking for posts about people organizing protests and stuff to crack down on this sort of thing, right? Like, I don't think this is not normal. This is law enforcement and like, federal government agents intermingling in people's right to organize. Like this is like kind of concerning stuff. And I think the other thing that I thought about this story was it was kind of surprising that that they even have, people who are actually trolling Reddit looking at things like this, especially because, it's within people's right to protest what is going on. It's not against the law. It's completely legal. So it's kind of surprising that there's a whole, like, they didn't just like save the post in like a document. They like literally went through this person's entire posting history, and they didn't even have a suspicion that a crime was going to be committed. So I think that's kind of concerning. This sort of thing shouldn't be happening in a country where, things should be, you should be free to organize a protest is what I'm trying to say. This is not like controversial, I don't think, without having federal agents just like monitoring your social media presence. So that's kind of the main concern that I got from this. And, people are saying, oh, what were they going to do? Like, they don't even know what they're doing. Like, I think this is just concerning from the fact that it was happening in the first place. But yeah, it's kind of raising alarm bells in my head, that this is sort of not something that is generally something that is good, that you would be happy about happening in your country. But I guess throwing it back to you, Nate, do you have anything more to add on that?
No, I totally agree with you. Real quick, according to Wikipedia, the Department of Homeland Security is a federal executive department responsible for public security. Its mission involves anti-terrorism, civil defense, immigration, and customs and border control, cybersecurity, transportation security, maritime security, and sea rescue, and the mitigation of weapons of mass destruction. Wow, that last one's new to me. Okay, Coast Guard's going to go stop nukes. No, I 100% agree with you, and it sucks because again, with my military background, I understand the idea of like you said, we don't know what this guy's going to do, but at the same time, like it just feels so heavy-handed. Like it's one thing to say like, okay, somebody made a post, they're going to be protesting tonight at 6. Noted. It's another thing to like go through this dude's history and compile a whole dossier, and especially to like put it on record. I don't know. I'm not trying to excuse it, for the record. I'm not trying to do that at all. But I understand the need to make sure he's not a threat. Like maybe you go through his history and you find all this like violent anti-government stuff, and it's like, oh, this dude might do something. But like you scroll through it for 5 seconds and you're like, he talks about sports, he watches movies, he talks about logos from TV shows. Like this dude is probably not going to do anything violent. And again, just the over response of, I don't know. It's just, it's everything about it. I don't like the overreaction. I don't like the fact that they went looking in the first place. And it like you're saying, it has such a chilling effect on protesting, especially when, again, in the context of the article said that even the government admits that generally speaking, the protests have been peaceful. They have been nonviolent. And to just have this overreaction of like treating everyone as a threat. Oh, I'm not going to dig into it too much because this is a really political take, but I think America has long had, and actually this is probably not even a hot take, even though it's political. I think America has long had a problem of the over militarization of police. I think everyone across the board can generally agree with that. And this is just kind of part of that trend of like, oh, somebody said anything, we instantly have to assume the worst intent and gear up for the worst. And it's like, again, was body armor and rifles really necessary? Was it necessary to go digging through all his history? It's really crazy. There were, I don't know if you had anything more to add to that, but there were a couple of posts that I thought, or comments in the chat here that I thought were pretty on point. If I could show those.
Yeah, sure. Let's see what people are saying.
Yeah. So Anonymous 35 said, this is why people should compartmentalize. I agree. Like, unfortunately, Reddit's making that really hard. I actually logged into Reddit today, and for the first time in like 2 years. And I was going to leave a post in r/privacy, and it got instantly deleted. Or I was going to leave a comment because while I was there, I saw something that I was like, yeah, I can weigh in on this. Instantly deleted because I haven't been on Reddit in so long that now my like user quality score, whatever crap, is like 0. And so I can't post anywhere. And it's like, okay, so what am I just supposed to like randomly comment on posts I don't care about so that Reddit thinks I'm not a bot? It's like, it's a hard system to game, at least for me, because I don't care enough to figure it out. But it's I guess what I'm getting at is some sites make it really hard to compartmentalize like that. But yeah, it is really, especially nowadays, if you're planning to be more politically active, where that's clearly going to put you under a microscope, it's probably not a bad idea to have your normal Reddit account where you only talk about sports and TV shows, and have your other Reddit account where you talk more about politics and stuff. So it's sad that we're moving into a world where just normal peaceful protesters need to compartmentalize. That's not a good trend. Yeah. And then this is just real quick. This is something that Jonah touched on recently. You said Facebook and Google are collecting your data so they can personalize ads. Government collects your data so they can ruin your life if they decide to. A couple weeks ago, when Jonah and I talked about the UK trying to ban VPNs, it sounds so, I hate that I'm saying this because I know that I sound crazy, but unfortunately this is the direction we're headed in. He pointed out that like a lot of the time authoritarian countries will outlaw very, very tiny things for the sole purpose that they can come after you anytime they want. And it's almost like in the military, they had what was called because this article's got me thinking about the military now. They had what was called I think it was, I want to say it was Article 34, but I think I might be confusing that with Rule 34. But anyways, they have this article that's literally a catch-all. And it's like, that's literally what it is. It has no purpose other than to be like, we want to nail you against the wall, so we're going to throw this charge on there too. That is the whole point of it. It's just like a general, like, you've done something generally not okay, and we disapprove of it, but it's not covered by anything else. And sometimes it's a standalone thing to like get you in trouble when you finally screw up too much and somebody doesn't like you. Sometimes they tack it on to like 6 other charges just to like pour salt in the wound. But yeah, it's like the same thing when all this data is collected. Like nobody ever goes through any significant period of their life without doing something illegal, without jaywalking, without accidentally littering, you know, and yeah, this stuff can be weaponized against you. Unfortunately, that is, again, I know I sound crazy, but like that's kind of the direction we're heading in, where every single thing is now making people suspect. And going back to what I was saying earlier about saying this for years, I hate being right.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's justified to feel frustrated, especially when a lot of times I think a lot of people in a lot of countries, they don't feel like they have any say over the authority that's imposed on them, like by the government. They can kind of just do what they can, protest, vote every once in a while, and the government still passes ridiculous laws that allow data brokers to collect all your information, even though most people would be against it. It's kind of the problem with, you know, centralization like that. But I think it's, yeah, you're right to feel frustrated with that. And I think it's also a problem pretty tied to privacy as well, because a lot of times these companies get away with doing all this stuff with your information because, you know, there's people in the government who benefit from allowing this to continue. So they don't have any reason to change the things that affect a lot of people. So that's my take on it, I guess. On your comment, Cannabitter, I think it's good. It's a good post. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything more to add here. I guess we can kind of move into the forum updates now. So in a minute, though, we'll start by taking some viewer questions. There was quite a lot of activity on the forum thread this time, so you can leave them there or you can leave them in the chat and we'll just pop them up on screen as well. But if you've been holding out, any questions on the stories that we've been talking about so far, definitely go ahead and start leaving them in the chat or in the forum thread. But for now, let's check in on our community forums. So there's always a lot of activity going on there, and especially in the last week or two, there's been quite a lot of controversial stories being shared and a lot of discussion around different topics. So if you're not already a member, definitely consider joining at discuss.privacyguides.net. So the first post that we want to touch on is basically it was a post, it was a news post on the forum, and there was a discussion around Google fulfilling an ICE subpoena demanding student journalists' bank and credit details. So this is kind of the issue that we talked about with, like we were talking about at the start, when you give all this information to Google, then when there is a law enforcement request, they can actually hand it over depending on, you know, what law enforcement request they receive. So it is kind of unfortunate that this student had their details handed over against their will and against their, you know, consent, I guess, because Google had it in plain text. So that is a problem with these tools, right? If it's not encrypted, then Google is free to share that information. So there was some discussion there in that thread. But yeah, did you have any thoughts on this one, Nate?
Thoughts on the story itself or thoughts on the thread? Because I'm looking through the thread and the thread kind of turned into a discussion about de-Googling, which I think is a really cool topic that I'm always down to talk about. But yeah, the story, it looks like this person went to a protest. We were just talking about that. Attended a protest targeting companies that supplied weapons to Israel at a Cornell University job fair in 2024. According to this article, they were there for about 5 minutes, but that was enough to get them banned from campus. And then, yeah, DHS requested, I'm assuming this was a large request and not just this person specifically, but probably as part of a request, Google or DHS requested data from this person or from Google and Meta. This included usernames, addresses, itemized list of services, including any IP masking services, so like VPNs, telephone or instrument numbers, subscriber numbers or identities, credit card, bank account. Excuse me. And yeah, apparently this person just found this out. So, that's crazy. The letter asks the companies to provide users with as much notice as possible before complying. So maybe Google was in the wrong here. Oh, no. Oh, sorry. I'm skipping around. That was a letter from EFF to big tech companies telling them to change how they comply with information. So, excuse me. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and I think it's like you said, it's I mean, kind of. I mean, it's two sides of the same coin, right? Like that's why people started talking about de-Googling. It's if information isn't encrypted, isn't zero knowledge, if the company's whole point is to know who you are and know every single thing about you, and as Google famously said, to read your mind, then that's data that they can turn over and they can hand over. And so trying to move away from these kind of bigger companies into things that are more privacy respecting, self-hosting, certainly if you have that technical expertise, but not everybody does. Just things that are all done on device. Like a lot of the discussion here was about like Google Maps and alternatives to Google Maps. So anything that's done on device, anything that stores your data in an encrypted fashion where they can't access it or tries not to store your data at all. I mean, that's kind of what we're all about at Privacy Guides. Big fans of that stuff.
Yeah, I think, moving away from as many Google services is always going to be a benefit for your privacy, because just the nature of Google, they're just one of the largest data collectors in the world. Any data that you can avoid giving to them is, I would say, good. But I guess in this case, I guess this is sort of, I can't actually read the article because it requires an email, but I'm going to assume it was a geofencing situation. Is that how they were able to identify?
Let me see. Let me go ahead and read, because I have it pulled up here and I'm skimming it, but let's see. Full extent of the information the agency sought. The subpoena provides no justification for why ICE is asking for this information. It just requests that Google not disclose the existence of the summons for an indefinite period of time. Good God Almighty. Yeah, he's this dude doesn't even live in the country anymore. That's crazy. I don't know. It doesn't specify how they got this person's information or why they were part of this. And I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe this was specifically targeted at that person, but yeah, it's kind of light on details on that, actually.
Yeah, that is kind of unfortunate. I would have hoped there was more information specifically about that, but I think, avoiding using Google services, like some people were in this thread, they were talking about, avoiding using Google Maps and stuff. I think, we could maybe touch a little bit on like protest OPSEC, but generally you don't really want to be using navigation things that are sending information to the cloud, because that location and your location at a protest could be recorded. And generally it's a good idea to be on the safe side, even though, you're completely within your right to do so. It's better to be safer than sorry and not have your location tied back to you, because this sort of thing can happen. Like ICE agents can subpoena your information from Google. Like, what the heck? But yeah, I think it goes without saying, if you're going to a protest, I would avoid bringing a phone entirely if you can. But I do realize some people might need communication methods. And also mobile phones are quite good for recording any activity at the protest, because there's always things that happen at protests which need to be recorded for transparency. So I think that's also another thing. But definitely using like a de-Google device is going to reduce the amount of location information. But there's always concerns with, cell tower triangulation, that sort of thing, especially at these large events. So there's always risks, I guess. But I personally would just avoid taking a mobile phone entirely, because, you know, there's separate devices you can use. Like you can bring a camera to record. I know some people use walkie-talkies and stuff. So I don't know. It's definitely a tricky situation, especially when there's a lot of this subpoenas coming. And I do wonder, this says ICE subpoena. Like I've been seeing information about the validity of some of ICE's subpoenas. Like, are they as valid as a judicial like warrant, or like a you know, I'm not really sure what the term is in the US. Like a do you know what that is?
So this article, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about real quick, this article doesn't specify, but it says that they identified this guy through his Gmail account. So I think you're onto something with the geofence warrant thing. And this was, I think recently geofence warrants have been outlawed or at least reined in a little bit, but this was like last year or 2 years ago now. So that was probably before that. But yeah, so basically there's two kinds of warrants. There's an administrative warrant, and I think the one you're talking about is called like a judge's warrant or something. And basically an administrative warrant never goes in front of a judge. It's basically, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but from what I understand, it's basically just like a fancy letterhead. Like it's really just ICE asking nicely with a fancy letterhead, like, please give us this data. And companies absolutely do not have to comply with that because a judge hasn't signed it. There's no actual like legal enforcement behind it. But we have seen this in all the big tech companies. And to be fair, this is not unique to right now. All the big tech companies will always bend over backwards to suck up to whoever's in office because not to be too political, but like they're going to outlast them, right? In 3 years, Donald Trump's going to be gone. But Apple's still going to be here. Google's still going to be here. Meta's still going to be here. So to them, this is just a game. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, let's make this guy feel good about himself. Again, both parties. I'm not picking on Trump here. Let's make this guy feel good about himself for 4 years, and then he'll shut up and go away, and he won't be our problem anymore. 4 to 8 years, and we'll just keep doing what we've been doing. This is business as usual for them. So yeah, they're not at all incentivized to protect your data. They're incentivized to not cause problems so that the government doesn't cause problems for them. It's a quid pro quo. That was a tongue twister, but yeah. But yeah, I've been seeing those articles you're talking about too. A lot of these these subpoenas don't have actual enforcement power behind them. It's just the government asking nicely, and they're totally going with it because it's just easier for them. So yeah. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, or should we move on to questions in the forum?
Yeah, I think we should move on here to the questions from viewers. So we'll start with questions on our forum thread first. And that's firstly, we'll look at any comments that are left by some of our paying members. And you can become a member by visiting privacyguides.org and clicking the red heart icon in the top right-hand corner of the page. And yeah, so we'll dive right into that forum thread. Is there anything you can see there, Nate, that pops out to you right now?
So I checked in a little bit throughout the week. I haven't really been logging into the forum lately, to be honest, but I do occasionally check to see like what kind of threads are pretty popular and what people are talking about. And somebody actually turned this into a question, so I guess we'll go ahead and discuss it. But there was a big discussion about the term normie and whether or not that is a label that should be used. So yeah, I don't know how Jordan feels about this one, but I'm trying to move away from that term personally, because I do think it can, intentionally or not, I think it can come off as very demeaning. And even if you're not talking to people who would fall under that category, I think it's just very, I don't know. It's kind of, I always say, like, don't put anything in a format you wouldn't want to be made public, right? And so I wouldn't want to be caught with somebody like, oh, you had this private chat where you called me a normie. Like, that's really rude. That's really messed up. And, I think it's just, I talk about this a lot too. I think people just have different interests. Some people are like super into cars and they can tell you everything about how a car works. And some people are super into sports and the Super Bowl, after I just got done trashing that. But, I think just because we're super, super into tech doesn't make everybody else a normie or make anybody like better than anyone else. But yeah, it's a term I'm trying to move away from personally. Yeah, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I think this is sort of falls down this interesting thing here where we say like, you know, what's normal? Like, I don't know. I think this is kind of a little bit boxing people into a certain thing. I'm not really a fan of that idea. I think, you know, normal is kind of, what even is that? Like that's pretty broad, right? And I think calling people a normie, I don't know. I don't think you should say that to someone's face. Like I wouldn't like to be called a normie. Like that's not very nice. So I always go for like less privacy conscious people or something like that. So I always go for something that's a little bit more neutral. It's not doesn't have a negative connotation, or can be perceived in a negative way. It's true. Like if someone aren't as concerned about their privacy, then they're less privacy conscious. So I think something like that, or just, you know, I don't know. I can't really think of any other way to address this, I guess, or address someone like that. But I think it's sort of an othering. It's an othering thing. It's like trying to other somebody, and I'm not really a fan of that language personally.
Yeah, I don't know if it's any better, but that's why I've started using the term like mainstream users, because it's not. I don't know. Maybe that's still not the best term, but I think I like yours, like less privacy conscious, because it's more, you know, when something goes mainstream and it catches on in the masses, like there's a certain way that people use things, whether that's like music or tech or something. And there's just a certain way that people interact with it where it's more, I guess, like it's more casual to them. Like I have, like, these are all band tattoos on my arms, and I have met plenty of people that are into these bands, but not enough to get tattoos. So, you know, it's like, it doesn't make me like any better than them. I'm not more of a super fan, especially some of these bands. I've met people that are like, I don't even know all the words and you do. So it's very, I don't know. It's just trying to acknowledge, I guess, that, yeah, it's just trying to remove that. I don't really like that term either, especially also because I also just don't like anything that comes out of like deep internet culture, to be honest. And I feel like that term does, but yeah, trying to find something more neutral so that people don't feel like I'm talking down to them would be really nice.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a good direction to go generally. So there was quite a lot of discussion in that thread around, you know, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? I guess we've sort of shared our thoughts on this. And there was another person who mentioned there was a age verification bypass tool. I mean, I'm not sure if we can really comment on that. That might be slightly legally gray area, I would say. It's there. You can use it if you want. We're not going to promote that, but that's the thing that you can do. I think it's only going to cause more harsher restrictions in the future, because as soon as they figure out people using these tools, they're going to require ID documents for everybody. They're not going to do these age estimation techniques anymore. So I think it's, you know, get in while you can, but I think this is only going to get worse if there's people bypassing it. And of course, there's always going to be people bypassing it. So it's kind of inevitable that it becomes ID documents or not. So I think that's the direction things are going in. But I mean, it certainly is a work in progress.
I was just going to say, I only saw it in one place, so I don't know how true it is, but apparently Discord is talking about switching their ID verification service to a different provider, specifically in response to this script that you're talking about. And like I said, I don't even know, like, would Discord have a way of knowing potentially who used it and who used the script versus who genuinely used the service that it's tricking, and reversing that? Or, you know, would that make them more likely to flag you as somebody who needs to age verify because you tried to use this script? Maybe you're a minor, you know, it's, yeah, I feel like it could backfire for sure. So yeah. Real quick before we move on to other questions, when they were having this normie discussion, one person said, they said maybe because somebody said, this is the reason that privacy guides in the community exist, to spread tech awareness to those who don't yet know or care. And somebody else said, maybe someday we'll be able to reach some people, but most of the people, said most of the normies, won't even hear about this community, unfortunately, too busy with their lives. I mean, I want to make it clear, I don't think it's everybody's job to teach everybody, especially in all kinds of subjects. But this is why we ask you guys to share videos, share social media posts, look for those opportunities when somebody's like, I'm having a hard time remembering passwords. There's too many passwords. Send them the privacy guides page about password managers. Somebody asks you about VPNs, send them the page about VPNs. Just look for those little opportunities to kind of spread the word, I think, because you don't want to be too heavy handed with it. But yeah, you're right. If we just depend on people to magically find their way to the forum or to privacy guides, some people will, but a lot of people won't without a little bit of a nudge and a little bit of help. So yeah, I just wanted to address that one.
Exactly. Yeah, there was one person at the end of this forum thread under the username me, and they had some questions around what we're talking about the Discord stuff. So first question was, do you think Discord is testing the waters for ID verification? We kind of talked about that before. Yes, I think they're going to move towards that eventually, especially because people keep bypassing it. And I don't think age estimation technology is very good because, like we talked about before, it's kind of racist, it's kind of sexist. It doesn't really equally verify people based on their appearance. It's kind of problematic like that. Also, you're just scanning people's faces, which, biometric fingerprints are kind of it's hard to change your face. You only have one face, and it's like your fingerprint, right? It's identifiable, extremely identifiable. You can't change it. That's a problem, especially because these companies are saying, we'll delete it, don't worry, we'll delete it straight after. And it's all right, well, I guess we'll see. But
yeah, pinky promise, right? Yeah. I actually I want to point out though, when you were saying you can't change your face, I read that that's actually how some people are getting around this in other places where age verification has already been enforced, in the UK, is I'm assuming mostly women, because women generally tend to be better with makeup. They're putting on makeup to make themselves look older than they really are. And I know I've definitely seen, I don't know about y'all, but my wife has shown me videos on TikTok of somebody who's very masculine guy and then puts on makeup and is the most beautiful woman you've ever seen, or vice versa. And so yeah, just adding to your point about this isn't going to work. And I understand that not everybody can do that. I sure can't do that. I don't know I know what mascara is. I know what eyeliner is. I know what lipstick is. That's the extent of my makeup knowledge. So obviously not everybody can do that, but it just goes to show how this trying to guess it with biometrics is horribly flawed. And it's probably, they're going to have to tighten it up, which I'm not happy about, but yeah.
Yeah, they'll be releasing you'll have to do a blood donation. You'll have to test your cells to make sure, to see how old you are.
We partnered with 23andMe.
I don't know. Hopefully not. That's a Black Mirror episode or something. But
so many headlines now were once Black Mirror episodes, and I'm not even being sarcastic. It makes me so mad.
It is kind of unfortunate. And I guess the next question that me had was, do you think this will affect Discord's user base in any significant way? I guess, I don't know if this is the right word, nihilist. I don't think this is going to it is going to put a little bit of a dent, I think. At the start, it's going to cause a little bit of a dent. Right now, there's definitely people leaving. But I think it's the problem with these community things, right? Because it's fine if you move. I don't know if anyone here has done this before, but people have been that's it. I'm moving to Signal. I'm ditching WhatsApp forever. And nobody else follows you. You're going to go back to WhatsApp. It's kind of the problem. You need everybody to be up and want to do that as well. And I just don't think that it's particularly easy to just up and move your entire community to a different platform. And people are very resistant to change, especially when everyone's been enjoying Discord since 2016. They're enjoying it apart from the age verification stuff. So I don't know. There's always people who are very critical of Discord, but I think they are very much a vocal minority on Reddit, on internet platforms. I think a lot of people just use the platform and don't really care. So that's my nihilistic opinion, I guess.
Sadly, I agree with you. And I have seen, I think it was even in that Ars Technica article we showed at the beginning, Discord explicitly said that they expect that some people are going to be upset and leave. And real quick, I kind of want to go back to something you said, I think, when we were having that discussion. If you're a creator of any kind, which I know is probably not most people watching, but if you are some kind of a creator, and most of our viewers probably have already thought about this, but if you are a content creator of any kind, you, in my opinion, you desperately need to be thinking about diversifying your community, because this could happen anywhere. Reddit has already done this once. Discord is now doing this. Facebook has done this like 500 times. Twitter could do this. Like, any platform you're using could change their terms of service tomorrow, and it just sucks to suck. So like, having parallel communities, having Discord and Matrix, having Facebook or Twitter and Mastodon, having, you know, like at Privacy Guides, we have Ghost as one way to support us. We have YouTube subscriptions. We have cryptocurrency. Like, putting all your eggs in one basket. We often talk about that in terms of our data. Like, some people, rightfully so, I'll keep this a short rant. Some people, you know, don't want to put everything in Proton, not because they don't trust Proton necessarily, but because that's all your eggs in one basket. Your email, your VPN, your password, your cloud storage, totally valid. So same thing if you are in any kind of a situation where you have control over your community, whether you're a creator, whether you're an advisor to somebody, definitely recommend, like, hey, we don't necessarily have to leave Discord, but what if we did spring up a Matrix server and start building over there too? And then when something like this happens, you're not rebuilding from scratch and you're not trying to convince everybody. And it'll be a whole lot easier too when people find out. It's like, you know, hey, if you're pissed off at Discord, we have a parallel community. Like, 80% of our people are over on Matrix too. They're 10 times more likely to jump over there. I guarantee it. But the last thing I wanted to add is I don't think a lot of people are going to leave, but one thing I think might be effective, I've seen a lot of people canceling their Nitro. And I think that might be a great compromise for a lot of people who maybe don't feel like Matrix is a good alternative. Canceling your Nitro, if enough people do it, will absolutely scare Discord. And I mean, I get it. I don't pay for Nitro, but there have been times I'm like, man, I kind of wish I did, because that would be a really nice feature. But you can still use it without Nitro. And again, if enough people do it, you can kind of eat your cake and have it too, where you can send a message without having to fully leave the platform. I don't think it would be as extreme as everybody leaving, but yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there personally.
I think, yeah, it's good if you are a Nitro subscriber. The issue that they get you with that, because there's a badge for being subscribed to Nitro for a certain amount of time. And if you cancel your subscription, it starts over again. So I think they've kind of built in all these little ways to keep people on the platform, to keep paying for that subscription. Personally, I don't think I could use Discord without Nitro. I can't go without my stickers. I don't know what I'm going to do. But yeah, I'm lucky I'm not on that platform anymore, and I'm on other ones that stickers aren't a paid feature, because why should they be? That's silly. But yeah, I think, you know, like Nate said, setting up alternatives for your community. I think a lot of people don't really, you know, a lot of people just use Discord for like chatting to their friends and like gaming stuff. And I think move that group chat over to Signal. It works fine. Move that group chat, move it over to Signal or Matrix or any of the other recommendations we have. I don't think it will be a terrible experience. And I think you'll avoid a lot of the awful stuff with Discord. I think, you know, a lot of times Discord is in a position where they can kind of leverage things and do crappy stuff because everyone's there and they don't want to move. So this is another instance of them being like, well, too bad. This is our platform. We're going to enforce this. And, you know, people have been going on about how crap Discord has been going. Like, they moved all their apps to web apps, even on mobile. And people were really unhappy with the performance. People were saying there's loads of bugs. And, you know, I think Discord doesn't really care about their users, because, you know, the web app is let's all admit it's much easier to develop a web app than doing native apps. So I think, they care about the money. They care about, like Nate said at the start, this is about them getting their public IPO completed for the most
IPO.
amount of money. Yeah.
Yeah, and real quick, just you keep mentioning like small groups and chats. Like, I agree 100%. If the only thing you really use Discord for is like to keep up with a handful of friends, or all the servers you're in, or like small servers with like you and 10 of your friends, Signal will work perfectly for that. Even Matrix will work perfectly for that. It's the challenges really start to come in when you have like these big, large public communities. If you're like a content creator or something, like, I think Matrix will be a bigger ask, and even Signal, I think, would be a really tall order there. But yeah, if it's just like you and a few of your friends in some group chats or some one-to-one chats, like, yeah, Signal works great. Matrix works great. Simple X works great. Like, a lot of the stuff we talk about, we promote on the website will work just fine. One more quick thing, not to like give everybody all the advice, but one thing that occurred to me while you were talking is also, like, you could set up on your own as a fan, you could set up like a fan community. Like, I've known of Discords that like were set up as a fan run community. And then once that content creator got to a certain size, they kind of discovered it and they were like, oh, I already have a community on Discord. I didn't even know that. And of course, because all the moderators were fans, they were like, yeah, come on in. We'll make you an admin. We'll like treat you like royalty. And so it's a stretch. I will admit that. But if you go start your own parallel fan group on Matrix and it gets big enough, maybe whoever you're starting the fan group about one day will just be like, I have like 500 people over there. Maybe I should go ahead and just make an account and check in every once in a while. So yeah, I don't know. It's a thought.
Yeah. But yeah, we are sort of getting to the end of the live stream here. I just want to cover one quick question here, because we just passed 2 hours for the live stream, and we try to keep it within 2 hours. So one last question here. The good thing about enshittification is that it will eventually happen to Discord and other privacy-invasive platforms, resulting in people leaving it someday. Sadly, that day may be very far in the future. This is a comment by Anonymous35. I think, I'm not sure if I agree, because, for instance, I can think of so many platforms that are just absolutely terrible. Like, there are so many people who just keep using Facebook. I don't know what the issue is, but basically any event here in Australia, like, it's always on Facebook, Instagram, Facebook Messenger. Like, it's a terrible platform. Like, if you talk to anyone that uses Facebook or Facebook Messenger, they'll tell you that it is absolutely buggy. It's terrible. It's a terrible platform. It's not fun to use. It's constantly breaking. But it's still the platform that everyone is on because of this, network effect that we're talking about. So I don't know if people are actually going to leave. People always say, oh, I'm going to leave, but it's like, will you though? I guess we'll see how it goes, but I am definitely wouldn't be surprised if things go back to normal in a month from now.
I sadly agree with you. I have not heard a single good thing about Facebook in probably close to a year now, maybe even more. Not one person has been like, people hate on Facebook too much. I kind of like it. It's like, I've heard people defend certain features, but even then they're like, yeah, it's crap except for these two things. Like, and yet people are still using Facebook like crazy. They haven't had a dip in revenue yet. I think they did one time, but not since then. So unfortunately, I share your nihilism on that one.
Yes. And with that being said, let's move into the outro here. All the updates from This Week in Privacy will be shared on the blog, which is already gone up. Thank you, Nate. And so sign up for the newsletter and subscribe with your favorite RSS reader if you want to stay tuned. For people who prefer audio, we also offer a podcast, which is available on all podcast platforms and also RSS. And this video will also be synced to PeerTube as well. Privacy Guides is an impartial, nonprofit organization that is focused on building a strong privacy advocacy community and delivering the best digital privacy and consumer technology rights advice on the internet. If you want to support our mission, then you can make a donation on our website at privacyguides.org. To make a donation, you can click on the red heart icon located in the top right-hand corner of the page, and you can contribute using standard fiat currency or you can use cryptocurrency to donate anonymously using Monero or your favorite cryptocurrency. And becoming a paid member unlocks exclusive perks like early access to video content and priority during the This Week in Privacy live stream Q&A, and you'll also get a cool badge on your profile on the Privacy Guides forum, and also the warm, fuzzy feeling of supporting independent media. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.